Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. It's Tanner Leeser, your host for The King in Giallo. This is episode 15 of the Forgotten Giallo film series, 1970, Part 2. And I've got one Giallo here I'd like to highlight. As always, thanks in no small part to Troy Howarth's book on Giallo cinema, So Deadly, So Perverse, 50 Years of Italian Giallo Films, Volume 1, 1963 to 1973. Like this video and subscribe to The King in Giallo, and do ring that notification bell so those lords of the algorithm may bestow their blessing upon me and you continue to be presented with weekly Giallo content. On to the video. The sixth Giallo being covered for 1970 is In the Folds of the Flesh, an Italian and Spanish co-production. The film is directed by Sergio Boneli, who also co-wrote the film along with Fabio De Agostini. Music is by Jesus Villarojo. The players in the film are Eleonora Rosie Drago as Lucille, Pier Angeli as Felice/Esther, Fernando Sancho as Pascal Goriot, Alfredo Mayo as Andre, and Emilio Gutierrez Caba as Colin. The film follows Pascal, an escaped convict who, while fleeing the pursuing authorities, finds himself on a large estate where he so happens to witness a woman, Lucille, disposing of the body of her second husband. Pascal is apprehended, and upon his release from prison 13 years later, he is down on his luck and returns to the scene of the crime he had witnessed in order to try his luck at some blackmail. What he finds is a terribly insane and dysfunctional family. The children of Lucille have grown into a family of murderers, and no one is safe. But what is the reason behind all this madness? The title comes from the film's opening quotation from Sigmund Freud. Quote, "What has been remains embedded in the brain, nestled in the folds of the flesh, distorted. It conditions and subconsciously impels." End quote. In the Folds of the Flesh is both one of the most bizarre Giallo films in content and is one of the more sloppily tossed together in terms of the overall production. The acting is obnoxiously over the top, the direction is hardly inspired or competent, the special effects are laughably obvious, decapitated mannequin heads flying through the air, and both the editing and the lighting seem to have taken the day off. Scenes drag. The story is ludicrous, the plot ridiculous, and this is one of those early Giallo films that piles on the surprises and the reveals one after the other. Perhaps this may be the only thing the film nails, which is being surprising, and unfortunately for it, it is not for the reasons it is going for. A surprise twist or reveal can be out of left field, but this film doesn't seem to grasp the nuance of this concept. To make it even worse, the dialogue is terribly corny, yet is delivered as if this is high drama. Eleonora Rosie Drago leads the cast in her final role on screen. She had appeared in films for over 2 decades, and in her final role, she unfortunately works as hard as the script itself. Sardinian actor Pier Angeli was born in 1932 and joined Italian films in 1948. Her good looks got her cast abroad in America in such pictures as Flame in the Flesh, 1954 by Richard Brooks, and Somebody Up There Likes Me, 1956 by Robert Weiss. Her career was fraught with ups and downs, but by this time it was evident that her time had passed and that she wouldn't ascend to the level of everlasting stardom. She would end up doing 2 more films after this, including Ochterman, 1971, before she ended up taking her own life that same year. Angeli proved to be a competent actor in her strongest roles, but here she is given next to nothing to work with. Her ability is thus squandered. Plus, she is not well cast for the character which she is playing. Spanish actor Fernando Sancho appeared in The Big Gundown, 1966, and Return of the Evil Dead, 1973. The director, Sergio Boneli, was known among Euro cult film fans for being on the more trashy and exploitative side. He was born in 1924 and began as a screenwriter and assistant director. In 1960, he debuted in directing, and through the decade, he had dabbled in a bit of everything. The Last Gun, 1964, a spaghetti western. The Sea Pirate, 1966, a swashbuckler. and School of Erotic Enjoyment, 1971, a softcore. None of these films really made an impression within any of their respective genres. One of his final films was the 1988 quote-unquote Giallo, starring John Philip Law, Blood Delirium, full of graphic sex and graphic violence. There is a lot of debate as to whether this film really is a giallo, and curiously, at the time of writing this, I have had this film in a tab on my computer open for about 2 months because it remains one of the last 2 gialli from Vinegar Syndrome, which I haven't bought yet. I suppose I might finally make that purchase, but 1988 means we won't be seeing that overview review giallitally video for a number of years. I digress. Sergio Boneli passed away in 2002. I hope you learned something new. If you are interested in watching this movie, look it up online. If you do watch it or you've already seen it, I invite you to leave your thoughts on it in the comments. Follow The King in Giallo on Instagram and give a like to The King in Giallo on Facebook. Subscribe here on YouTube if you aren't already, and join me every week for new Giallo film content. Join The King in Giallo on Patreon for exclusive content. Upcoming content on The King in Giallo will be the overview, review, and giallitally for the third Giallo from Umberto Lenzi, 1970s A Quiet Place to Kill, starring Carol Baker and Jean Sorel. Thank you very much for your continued support. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
That drink's gone straight to your brain. You've already forgotten that you were here. That your prints are on the murder weapon. You probably shouldn't be drinking while you're on duty. I haven't touched a drop myself. I just like to hold it. A good man holds a beer.